Apple says the phone will know you well. Well, there's no doubt about that. It's going to know you very well. It's going to know what you're doing at every moment. They're not calling your AI your personal assistant yet. Mark my words, David. It will be impossible for you to interact with the AI without your personal data leaving your device. Your entire life is on the computer in a way that's never been collected before. Never! To me, the iPhone has got to be ranked at the top. It's the most advanced surveillance device ever made.
This device can sense everything about you. The phone can figure out your interest in content based on your eye movements. It can see which part of the screen your eyes are focused on. The new OS constantly listens to you now without even a trigger other than a voice. Your voice is a trigger. Didn't you have to press a button before?
You are being watched. The government has a secret system, a machine that spies on you every hour of every day.
Everyone, it's David Bumble back with the amazing Rob Braxman. Rob, great to have you back on the channel.
Great to be here.
Yeah, Rob, I mean, this is, I think, our third interview. And what's been amazing about our previous interviews, and just for everyone who's watching, I suggest you go and do this for yourself, but I'm going to give you some history now. We published our first interview on the 28th of August, 2022, so quite a while ago.
Wow.
And you were predicting phones sensing the environment, and it sounded like a bit far-fetched. And it wasn't even a month later, so on the 16th of September 2022, Apple released crash detection on the iPhone. So it's like your prediction was spot on. And then another interview we had was on the 26th of April, so this year. You said the biggest threat was client-side scanning. And we were talking about how VPNs were going to be like null and void because of client-side scanning. And a month later, I see TechCrunch had an article about Google using AI to scan phone calls while people were talking in real time. And then in June, Apple Intelligence was announced. And in August, we had Microsoft Recall. So again, you were spot on. So just for everyone who's watching, I suggest you do the same with any claims that Rob makes. But Rob, I'm amazed how you can do this, because a lot of the things, and I say this is really unfortunate, a lot of the things that you predict actually take place.
Incredible.
I had made so many predictions even before that on various topics. And that comes with age, David. I guess when you've been doing this a very long time.
But I want to hone in on one of the things you said recently. You said that I should not buy an iPhone 16. Previously, you mentioned crash detection. I remember specifically when you spoke about that, how I thought this can't be true. And then like literally a month later, crash detection was released by Apple. I mean, you were saying the phone could sense the environment and could sense if there was violence or something happening. So I'm assuming, I mean, that's still a worry, right? The phone can actually sense what's going on. And like you mentioned crash detection originally, and I've mentioned some of the others. Another thing you also mentioned was like find my phone even if it's off. So, I mean, is this why, you think an iPhone 16 is so bad?
People have actually asked me on that, find my phone went off, and they're saying that I'm making that up. And, I've made so many videos about this. No, I am not making that up, because even Apple says that.
So just for people who haven't seen the videos, Find My iPhone means that even when the phone is off, it can still be tracked, right? You said it acts like an AirTag.
Right. So what happens is when you turn off the iPhone, it turns to an AirTag. This was released, a year ago? This feature, or 2 years ago? I can't remember now. But the feature is, if the iPhone is unpowered, it will go into an AirTag mode. And what AirTag mode means is that it sends out signals using Bluetooth BLE, Bluetooth Low Energy, and then you can find the phone. So the phone is constantly communicating with other phones using Bluetooth Low Energy. And one of the things that people don't actually understand is how location is attached to this, because an AirTag itself does not have location. So somebody will tell me, oh, your AirTag, according to Apple, is encrypted and no one can see where that particular AirTag is located. And actually that is correct, because there's no location in an AirTag. What happens is, in order for this to work, every phone that detects a Bluetooth AirTag device has to wrap that AirTag ID, and I'm sure it's hashed, so you can't tell which one it is, and send it with location to Apple. And then multiple devices then sense the location of the AirTag, and then they can triangulate it based on multiple devices to know exactly where it is. So that's how it has to work. And they're saying, well, it's encrypted. Yeah, the AirTag has to be encrypted, but your location is not, meaning you're sending your location as part of the AirTag tracking as it is. And there's actually other things that they're doing, which they don't deny that they're doing. Like I told you about Wi-Fi triangulation in the past, where they're sensing Wi-Fi router around you. So they're always constantly sending location.
This is still a massive problem in today's world. People's passwords are out there. Many sites have leaked passwords, leaked credentials, but attackers can also simply guess passwords because people still use such bad passwords in today's world. I really want to thank Brilliant for sponsoring this video. Now, this course from Brilliant teaches you one of those concepts that a lot of people seem to struggle with, and that's to do with hashing. They explain password hashing and why you want to use hashed passwords rather than store the original passwords in a database. Unfortunately, today, companies still store clear text passwords or passwords in non-hashed form in databases, and that stuff gets out there. What I really love about the training from Brilliant is it's very interactive. Brilliant is a learning platform designed to be uniquely effective. Their first principles approach helps you build understanding from the ground up. Each lesson is filled with hands-on problem solving that let you play with concepts, a method proven to be 6 times more effective than watching video lectures. Plus, all content of Brilliant is crafted by an award-winning team of teachers, researchers, and professionals from MIT, Caltech, Duke, Microsoft, Google, and others. Brilliant helps you build your critical thinking skills through problem solving, not just memorizing. So while you're building real knowledge on specific topics, you're also becoming a better thinker. I probably don't have to say this, but learning a little every day is one of the most important things that you can do, both for personal as well as professional growth. Brilliant helps you build real knowledge in only a few minutes a day with fun lessons that you can do whenever you have time. It's also the opposite of mindless scrolling. I really want to thank Brilliant for sponsoring this video and supporting my channel. Now, to try everything that Brilliant has to offer for free for 30 days, you can go to brilliant.org/David Bombal, or you can use the QR code on screen, or use the link in the video description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. You also mentioned the iPhones can communicate without the internet. Is that right?
Correct. So Bluetooth Low Energy is part of the Apple Mesh Network. That was part of what they added a couple of years ago now. One of my Skynet videos that also had a lot of views. Bluetooth Low Energy is a mesh network that can actually accept traffic between iPhones without even any internet involved. And the way that it's made to work, and this is a Bluetooth standard, it's not something that Apple invented, is that every device can send a BLE message. The other device can listen to the BLE message and then retransmit to the next device until that device says end of transmission or we got it. And then say, no more, don't retransmit. And the way they're going to say it don't retransmit, it's when they are able to send it to the internet. So let's say you're in a location that doesn't have internet because there's an outage. Let's say I'm in Los Angeles. Let's say there's an outage in my part of the city. Then it's theoretically possible for BLE messages to go from my part of town all the way to the other part of town where there is internet and then connect to Apple.
And I mean, you've got the phone scanning the images, right? So, I mean, that's client-side scanning.
That's right.
So you can find that specific images. So, I mean, that's also a nightmare. You've also got all the legacy sensors like GPS, Wi-Fi triangulation and stuff you've mentioned in previous videos. So,
that's
I mean,
right.
The phone can be discovered. So, reasons you wouldn't get an iPhone 16, right, is because it can detect where you are, can detect what's going on around it. You've got the eye tracking. You've got vocal shortcuts, so it's always listening. Like you said, so from a privacy concern, just like highlight, why is this a problem? Like vocal shortcuts, because the phone is always listening, correct?
Right.
Eye tracking, so it's always watching.
Camera is.
Yeah, the camera is, so it can see eye tracking, can see what's going on around it. What's iPhone to iPhone mirroring?
Well, that's when somebody can actually look at your screen. So there's a technology in the phone already. And somebody made a comment in my video. Well, that's old technology.
Yeah,
well, of course, it's old technology. I'm not saying it's new, but it's one of the things that it can sense. If the technology is there to look at your screen and look at it remotely, well, obviously, that's a fear.
Yes, I mean, you've got like the phone's always watching you. The phone is always listening to you. It can be connected to remotely and controlled remotely. You've got AI scanning your images or AI collecting data about you locally. Supposedly, that's supposed to stay locally, but I mean, that could be sent to a centralized server or could be queried remotely. You've got GPS, Wi-Fi, etc. So basically, you've got a device in your pocket that's tracking you 24/7. But not only is it just tracking where you are, it's finding very personal information about you. Is that why it's like one of the worst devices to buy?
I mean, I can't think of the moment of any device with this kind of power.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Google wants to make this kind of device. But if I'm going to say which one has the technology for it, I don't think any device is more powerful at this kind of environmental sensing as an iPhone. I mean, it's about as sophisticated as you can get.
So basically, you've got an agent running on a phone that can find out information about you. You've got a device that's sensing everything around it. So you've basically got a spying device in your pocket or in your house, just looking at you 24/7.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
Incredible for me. And you know what? I've known this was going to happen since the first AI modules were put into Apple 10. I mean, iPhone 10. So I personally was so bothered by that. I had to stow away my iPhone 10, and it's now in a Faraday bag because I need it for testing occasionally. And I don't use any iPhones, and no one in my household uses an iPhone. So I'm that concerned about it.
And what about Google devices? Because in the past, and correct me if you've changed your opinion on this, but in the past, Google was seen to be the worst. But like, what's your ranking of like the worst tech companies? Is Windows or Microsoft the worst now? Or is Apple the worst now? Is Google the worst now? Amazon? Are they just as bad as each other? You know, what's the worst? Like maybe you've got some kind of ranking of, you know, good and bad and ugly.
Yeah, I actually do, but it's kind of a different thing. Now, let me just tell you, Google's always the worst, but it's not on device. They're not worse on device. Google's the worst because it tracks every click on the internet. But the Google technology is the Google ID. It's tied to the Google ID. If your Google ID is known, well, obviously anywhere you go on the internet, the Google ID is announced. Now, I don't know why this is such a difficult concept, and I don't know why people don't understand this part, because it's so simple to me. Everything you do from your phone that has a Google ID, including iPhones, because of course you're gonna do something Google on your iPhone. I mean, 90% of you have Gmail, and you're gonna do something Google on that phone, even an iPhone, and you're gonna send your Google ID out. Anytime you go on the internet, you're identified by your Google ID. Because of this, Google already has your personal data. They don't need to infect your phone. They already got you. So for this reason, the Google spyware is more about internet interactions. Whereas this is the most dangerous device to me, in my mind, is the iPhone, because it's more about sensing things locally. And that's worse than Windows Recall. Windows Recall is extremely bad, but it doesn't have the sensing tools that an iPhone has. And that's why, to me, the iPhone has got to be ranked at the top. It's the most advanced surveillance device ever made. And by the way, I just want to make this clear. People always say, but they're not saying that in their terms of service that they're going to use it for that purpose. Well, every terms of service always has except as required by law. You can find that in every terms of service, except as required by law. So what is the required by law? Well, in the case of the U.S., it's the Patriot Act. And every country, China has its own version, I'm sure. Well, the Apple servers are in China, so they don't even need that. They just go knock on the door of the Apple data center and say, we want to look at data. So they can do that directly. So one thing that I want to make clear, when a company like Apple or Google, when it participates in something called the Google Sensor Vault, where all of your locations are stored in the Google Sensor Vault, and they're shared with the government, which they are, okay? Let me come back to that. It is shared with the government for sure, 100%, is that these services, including back to the days of PRISM, which Snowden talked about, the PRISM program. I read this in Wikipedia. It says that these services are paid for, meaning the government paid for this. They have a profit center in sharing data with the government. It says it on Wikipedia, so somebody must have information that verifies this. So the problem is that Google, as an example, collects data and puts it into the Google Sensor Vault, which has all of your locations, whether it be an iPhone or a Pixel or a Samsung or whatever it is. It puts it into Google Sensor Vault. And we already know because of court cases, so many court cases where the data for location, it's called geofencing, was using the Google sensor vault. So this is not something I have to invent. It's factual. They're using the Google sensor vault. It's in court documents. So just to give you a bit of background, again, my style is you look at the technology and say, what can you do with this? And what I've noticed with big tech is if I think they can do X, they will actually do it. And then the next question is, if there's anything bad you can do with this tech, they will actually do it. And they will speak on the side and make claims that, we're not doing anything bad. But it's historically, they've always done that. So when it comes to the AI issue, because the AI issue is kind of broad, you see terms like Apple Intelligence, and they're saying, we're going to give you more photos, or Windows Recall. The Windows Recall one, the justification for it is so vague because they can't talk about the real reason you want to have Windows Recall. So they're saying, you can use Windows Recall so that you know what you've done on Windows. And I've been using Windows since, Windows 3.1. I've been using DOS too before that. And at no point have I ever said that I'd like to know what I did. If anything, I just want to restore to what I did, using backup tools. But I don't know if I ever said, what did I look at a few months ago? Why is that necessary? And that's the kind of justification that they're using because they can't announce to you what the real purpose is yet. And that's going to be semi-discussed in my last video, which is not specific to iPhones. The prior video before that was specific to iPhones. And then the new video I'm releasing is a more general hit on AI, which is precisely what this is all about. So the basic issue is AI. Now, I don't want to be talking about AI like a cursory view and just give opinions and act like I'm some AI expert without actually, doing something. So this is what I did, David. I wrote programs to duplicate Windows Recall and Apple's Media Analysis D, which is part of Apple Intelligence, which I presume will be the same stuff used by Google Gemini. So I duplicated that. I actually made a video, which nobody watched, maybe because it was, programming. So it's technical. Programming related, but it was very important to document that. I also documented how AI works. And just to make sure that people understand this, I didn't just document it from some theoretical basis. I actually looked at the source code because it was open source. I looked at the source code, examined, and then described exactly how it was going to use that. And that's the transformer module. That's a part of the AI that does the inference. Of course, I don't know the software that does the learning. I don't have access to that. But the inference side, I could see what it was doing. And so, which is really the fear here, is the inference. Inference is when the AI is on your device. For example, if you're using an iPhone, Apple Intelligence is doing inference. Windows Recall is not an AI, by the way. And this is a terminology I'm going to clarify as well. It's going to be it'll be in my video after this or before this interview releases. So the Windows Recall and Apple Intelligence are run by an AI. You can consider the AI as a separate entity. It runs on your device. But the actual actions that we worry about are done by something called AI agents. So the AI itself is kind of like a typical LLM. You ask a question of an AI and gives you an answer, right? That's what an AI does. If you think about it, how can that do anything bad to you? It's just giving you an answer. You ask a question, it gives an answer. And that is actually true. An AI by itself is not dangerous because all it can do is you ask a question and it gives you an answer. Where the danger of that kind of AI is if it gives you an answer that's biased, in which case then you're not getting accurate information. But that's not in itself the kind of privacy danger I'm talking about. The privacy danger is something called AI agents, and that is what we're talking about here. And that's what Windows Recall is. Windows Recall is an AI agent. The Media Analysis D that runs on Apple devices. I don't know what they call it on iPhone, but on a Mac, it's called Media Analysis D. You can look it up. You can go see that running process, Media Analysis D. You can try to shut it down. And that's the module that is an agent. There are many agents. I'm sure there's a location tracking agent, a sensing agent, and all these different agents. Now, what do these agents do? What these agents do is collect data. So in the case of, let's talk Windows Recall because that's so specific and easily duplicated, which I did. So Windows Recall works by screenshots. So it's taking screenshots every few seconds. So I actually wrote that program. I actually wrote a program to say, let's take screenshots every few seconds. So I don't want people to, think I'm just, making this up. So I wrote a program that said, okay, screenshot every few seconds. Now, of course, for efficiency, you don't want the screenshots to take constant photos of the same stuff. So if your screen is static, you went off to get some coffee, your screen is still taking screenshots. No. So what I did was I made a code that said, let's take a screenshot only if the screen changes. And I gave it some arbitrary number, like 20% change. If the screen changes, take a screenshot. And somebody will say, well, that's very inefficient. Actually, no. As it turns out, when you do a screenshot, which is only a millisecond, really, if you do it and compute if the screen changes before you do it, it's actually not happening all that often. It actually doesn't even take that much CPU power. You're not even going to sense it. So if it detects the change, it saves it to a file. Now, what I did in my program is I said, okay, take that file, the screenshot you did, and send it to the AI. Now, this is the AI portion of this. So the AI agent is taking your data, sends it to the AI. The AI then evaluates a photo, and I told it to evaluate what it sees, and then it returned it to the agent. The agent then stores a description of the screen into a file. This is not theoretical. Actually, I did it. I built it.
Yeah.
I couldn't share the source code because people would think I'm giving out malware. I think I would be banned by YouTube if I did that. So
Yeah.
I did not show the source code, but I'm going to tell you the reality is I was lazy. I had the AI write the source code. The AI wrote it. Okay.
Yep.
It didn't work. I had to tweak it, but it did a good chunk of the work. So I didn't have to spend my time fiddling with it. It didn't take that long. And then you look at the text of what it sees on screen. Okay, now that's just part of the equation. So we know that a Windows recall can in fact examine your screen and evaluate what you're looking at on screen and write it in kind of a summary file. It can do that.
Yeah.
Media Analysis D, the module that is the Apple version, looks at your photos. In fact, it looks at anything in File Manager, I think, because it seems to trigger with anything related to any file change. So if it spots a file in its, media, it's able to do the scan. And of course, Apple already said it's scanning and putting into a hash file, which is the same concept that Windows Recall, that it puts a description of the image. And if some of you, say, well, you're theorizing all this, well, that's what triggers your timeline.
Yep.
Is that what they call a timeline?
Yeah, like your history, right, of your photos, right?
Yeah, where it actually, you can search for a topic on your photos, and I don't know what the wording is. I think it's timeline. So, but anyway, the point is, you ask for a topic, and the photos that relate to that topic come out. Well, strangely, how similar that is to the concept of CSAM that we've talked about before. Client-side scanning with CSAM, same concept. You, as the user, can search through your photos by description, which is what Apple Intelligence does, which is what Windows Recall does, which I'm sure is what Google Gemini will do. I don't have any experience with that, but that's what it's going to do. So now we have a case here where your phone is accumulating data about you personally and then storing it into a file. And then you got the device history. So Apple and Microsoft don't have any personal history about you because they don't track you over the internet. And what they want to do is make the AI a personal assistant.
What?
Now, this is very important because this is really where this is all leading. This is why they never explain to you what Apple Intelligence is really for or what Windows Recall is really for. And the reason is, or Windows Copilot actually officially, the reason they can't tell you that because they can't do it yet. It has to build data. So the data that it has to build is what I call a personal profile or personal context. So once the information about you and what your likes, dislikes, what you do on the computer, what your preferences are, what kind of music you like, once all that's accumulated, it is now stored on your computer. So now your machine becomes kind of a duplicate. It's a duplicate of your brain.
Yeah.
It's basically duplicating what you're thinking. Everything about you is now on your computer. Now, at that point, that's where the AI agent can now interact with the AI. And this is really a very, very important point here. What will happen is when you use an AI like Apple Intelligence or Windows Recall, or Windows Copilot, sorry, and you ask it a question, let's say, what movie should I watch? Or, choose some music for me or something like that implies some personal knowledge. What will happen is the AI will take your personal context or personal profile and send the AI agent will take your personal context and send it to the AI. The AI can then respond and give you an answer. Now, I actually proved this and actually wrote my own chatbot to explain how this actually works. The way AI works is if you just ask an AI a question without any context, it will give you a pretty random answer that doesn't relate to your taste, right? Can you imagine asking the AI, select the best music for me? Well, it's not going to know anything. It's probably going to ask you, well, what kind of music do you want?
Yeah.
It's not going to have that knowledge. But an AI that's been given this background, I call it a prequel, will be able to do something like this. This is now the issue. So the AI stores your behaviors, your activity, anything that you do into this profile and feeds it to the AI. This is actually how AI works. AI works, there's actually many technical terms in AI for this that I've duplicated myself. And that is for AI to actually be practical, you have to actually send it a context. That's the actual official word, context. There's a context memory. And currently the original AIs that, from many months ago, from the beginning of the year, can handle maybe 2K context, like 2048 context, meaning you can give it a summary of something that doesn't exceed 2K. But the new AIs, in fact, the new one from the model from China was 64K. That was pretty high. And then the new chat GPTs have megabytes of context. And then they're planning on having unlimited context. Now, what that means is you have the AI with its intelligence, then you add intelligence to it with something called context. So it's context plus learned data. And then the AI then takes all of that and responds to you. And the reason this is important because AI by itself only knows what it knows from what it learned. And it learned it from 2 years ago or a year ago or whenever the learning was done. So it is not able to respond to current events or current knowledge or your personal profile. Now, so that's the mechanics of an AI, and that's really the issue. And most people say, okay, so what? And this is really the question. So what? Why am I talking about this? What is the importance of this? Well, the problem is this personal profile context that I'm talking about. That's a description of you. Your entire life is on the computer in a way that's never been collected before. Never. Now we're talking about a new style of observing you.
Yeah.
Somebody over your shoulder, this is the AI over your shoulder here, looking at you and saying, what are you doing? Oh, you like looking at this kinds of photos. How interesting. That's the AI. Oh, you're very political. I can see that. You're doing all this. You're an artist. Oh, yeah, I can see the kind of artistry you're doing and exactly what subject matter you're talking about. All of this is now known by the computer in a way that it's never been done. And then that is now on your device. Now, Apple will say this, well, that's okay. And they actually admit that the computer will know you well. Okay. Windows Recall says the same thing. The computer will know you well. And we say, well, that's not a problem. Well, you know me and prediction, right?
Yeah.
So you've enabled a technology that collects your personal data and puts it on the computer. So what stops the AI or the agent from sending that summary of you elsewhere? What stops that? No, I mean, just technologically, what's stopping it? And somebody will be a fanboy and say, oh, no, that Apple says it's not going to do that. What is the actual technical limitation? It's going to be a small file, maybe a megabyte at most, that describes you. It says, oh, this person is leans right and does this and does that, and describes you in some way that somebody can use, and maybe certain behaviors. He has interest in these kinds of things, and I'm not going to mention anything that YouTube doesn't like.
No.
So we'll say you like jazz,
Yes.
right? You like jazz. It's So let's say that somebody at HQ at Apple or Microsoft says, let's search for all the people who like jazz. Now, I love jazz, so they track me pretty much, but they track me to the point that they know exactly what I'm selecting on Spotify, right?
Yep.
So not only does he like jazz, but he likes this particular music, and he likes it in the background while he's doing spreadsheets. So they eat to that detail. So now that's the problem, is that data now can be queried, and Apple, Microsoft, Google can state to the world and can state to anyone buying their device that, hey, we're very private. We're not looking at your screen. No, sorry, they are looking at your screen, but we are not sending your data externally. And that's true. They can make that claim all they want. iPhone is privacy. Windows Recall is privacy, which is kind of like stupid sounding, right? Windows Recall is privacy. But that's what we're talking about, is they're making the claim, which is, politically nice claim, that, hey, your data never leaves your computer. Your data will never leave your computer, and they will actually be accurate. That's actually going to be true. But nobody said the summary of your data or the observations of your data will never leave your computer. It's impossible for that to happen. Let me give you a specific. Again, back to predictions. I mean, this is common sense stuff, but
Yep.
But just so you understand. So you're on Apple Intelligence. You're on an Apple device, and you want to write an essay, something near and dear to your heart. And if you go to college, they tell you when you write an essay that the best way to appeal to the reader is to put your personality into it. It's got to be personal.
Dave, you're describing your personality,
Which is how I make my videos, is personal. If what you write is personal, it appeals more. So then I asked the Apple Intelligence LLM, the large language model AI on the iPhone, if I had an iPhone, and I say, write me an essay on my love of jazz. Well, of course, the LLM inside the phone is fairly small. It's, I can't imagine it being larger than your typical 4 gigabyte model. So it's not going to have the power to come up with a very sophisticated essay, because that's what you're asking for, an essay. So what is it going to do? Well, as you know, Apple already said, and Windows Copilot has said this as well, and that's the architecture, is that the small AI on your device will then send your query, because it knows it's too complicated, will send it to the big server. Now, if you didn't know this, the large servers now for inference is now on Microsoft's data centers, and they're the biggest right now. I forget how many thousands of GPUs that they're putting in a month. GPUs, thousands of GPUs. It's some huge number, like 4 to 10,000 GPUs a month. a month, expanding their servers to handle, because the GPU is a measure of how much inference it can do. So Microsoft has very big servers now, and obviously it's not relying on the AI of your little device or your computer or your laptop. It's looking to pass that request onto the big servers where it can do the more sophisticated tasks like write an essay. And by the way, it's using OpenAI because Microsoft is now the biggest owner of OpenAI. So if you're going to write an essay, David, how do you have the big AI write an essay? Ask that same question of ChatGPT. Just, if you don't believe me, go to ChatGPT, go open a browser and say, write me an essay on how I love jazz. See what it's going to come up with. It's not going to come up with anything because it doesn't know you. Doesn't know you. But Microsoft Copilot will know you. How does it know you? Well, obviously, it has to pass the personal context because that's how AI works. It needs context. There's some more technical terms of how you put a database of search criteria and data and add it to the AI. I'm not going to get into that, but the context is a kind of a general description of it. So AI always needs this context. In fact, that's how AI is used to do tech support. You pass a context. For example, in a business case, if you're doing an AI on, how to repair some rocket parts, it's going to go to the manual, take the appropriate part of the manual, put that as context and send it to the AI. That's how that tech support would work. Same concept here, except it'll be your personal data. Now, you can see here that it will be impossible for you to interact with the AI without your personal data leaving your device. I don't know how it's possible.
So your prediction is not only is it client-side scanning, where they're scanning all your stuff locally, but they're going to be sending your data to central servers. Is that what you see that's coming, right?
Right, but not in the same way that it's stored by Google, because right now Google, of course, stores everything you do on the internet. Every click you do on the internet is stored by Google using Google Analytics and your Google ID and Google Ads and so on. So that's a different process because that's stored in a database. Here, it's stored on your computer and send one shot to the AI. Now, somebody will say, well, they're not storing that. And you know what? You're right. They don't need to. Why would you need to store your personal context? They don't need to. All they need to say is, AIs, all the AIs around the world, find me this guy that loves jazz and does internet privacy, that has a YouTube channel. Find him. Find his device. Would the AI find me? Think about that. That's pretty specific. The guy that writes the videos, that makes the videos about privacy, loves jazz, find his device. Then give me his personal context and tell me what else he does. How do you stop that? Is there a way to stop that? I personally have no way of knowing what kind of programming limitations. This is not like an algorithm like end-to-end encryption that you have a specific math thing that you can say, oh, we are certain that it's going to be secure because of technology called end-to-end encryption. There's nothing to stop this. So once you've enabled the AI on device, that this is the difference here because the AI is on device. Why can't you tell the AI on device to do something? Well, you can because you can intersperse an AI agent. So this is where I'm specifically talking about. It's not the AI itself. It's the agent. You can instruct agents to be on device to do anything you want. So that is my prediction. Now, David, this is not possible yet. Somebody will say, Apple Intelligence is not even going to go online till December. Yes, even if it goes online in December, it's not yet the risk because it hasn't accumulated the data yet. Windows Recall needs to accumulate the data. Apple Intelligence needs to accumulate the data on device. So give it a year. A year from now, the AI will know you, and then Apple will have ads that say your personal assistant. And this is the word that I'm looking for, personal assistant. So my warning to you is, you haven't heard it yet. They're not calling your AI your personal assistant yet. Mark my words, David. Mark words. Once they accumulate the data, they will start calling your AI personal assistant.
Hello, I'm here.
Oh.
Hi.
Why can't they do it yet? Because they don't have any data yet. A year from now, 2 years from now, whoa. So this is a building threat. So we're not there yet as far as data. The architecture is there to accumulate it, and the framework is there to use it. Now, one point I want to make here. What does it relate to, let's say, Apple and what I claim about Apple on the iPhone? Well, Apple has already stated that they could look at your phone, client-side scanning, and see if you're collecting photos, illegal photos called CSAM. We know that Apple said they can do this. Now they said, we're not going to do this. So they suspended the project. I've always thought this was kind of a test of the technology to say, how do people react to this if it's done for a positive purpose? But the fact is, what I was talking to you about asking the AI to scan your device is exactly how this CSAM was supposed to work. Meaning, they already proved to you that they can do exactly what I just said about your AI being able to examine your content and send it elsewhere. There you go.
So your prediction is client-side scanning is what we spoke about last time. That's happening now, where they scanning your device. AI is running locally, scanning all your information. So they've got that information. But the next step is push that to a centralized AI, which they need to do like on an iPhone. If it can't find the information locally, then you can get it to use ChatGPT as an example. So, but that information could be sent to a central AI. But then the scary part comes in now, where a government or whoever could say, okay, find me this person that fits these criteria, or find me these people, and these through the AI central AI perhaps connecting to all these mini AIs, if you like, running on the devices, they could find you, find something specific about you. Did I understand that right?
That's correct. That is correct.
So every single device becomes a spying agent for a government or a company, whatever. So unlike in the past where the devices were more dumb, now the agent running on your phone or your computer, whatever, is an intelligent agent, can understand exactly what you're doing, can make summaries of that information, and that can be queried. Now that's where it gets scary. Is that right?
That's correct. Now you even used the proper term, agent, which is very funny because agent is an official AI term. I didn't make this up. They're actually called agents. An agent is a programming task that runs like a daemon program. So that's the actual official term in the AI lingo. And surprisingly, it really is an agent. Yep. It actually matches its purpose. It's a spy agent.
So the agent running on your device, collecting all this information about you, it intelligently understands information like your photos. Like you can just on an iPhone search for like a number plate and it'll find that information, or just search for something in a photograph. It'll go through all your photos, find that information for you very easily. So it understands the context, understands the data about you. It builds this context like you mentioned, or this profile of you as a person. It understands who you are, knows everything about you. That at the moment supposedly stays on the device. So it's only scanning locally, so client-side scanning, local scanning. But in the future, the governments are going to be greedy with this kind of information and want to get access to that. So at some point, the government could query everything about you from a central location if they wanted to. Kind of right?
Right. But there's a part that I didn't mention, and which is specific to phones, and which is specific to my video on Apple Intelligence. And that is the sensors portion. So we talked about media scanning, scanning. Windows recall scans keystrokes, which is pretty bad.
Yeah, keylogger. I mean, that's malware by any cybersecurity term.
Yeah,
right?
But they're saying, well, it doesn't leave your computer, so it's okay. It's your own data. So, but yes. So I duplicated it too. I wrote a program then doing key logging and then having the AI analyze that. I wrote it. People should watch that video and if you're a programmer type, so you can see exactly how I did that, which is very easy. It wasn't a very hard task to do. If it's not hard for me, how hard can it be for Apple and Google to do? I mean, it took me a day. So can't be like super complex. Now, the problem is the sensor. So now this is why I specifically focus on the iPhone. So not only is it doing client-side scanning of media and possibly keystrokes, the iPhone has certain things that it activated. And you have to wonder why they activated it like this. For example, vocal shortcuts. Yeah. So somebody said, well, iPhones can always, interpret your words. Yeah, but back in the day, you had to press a button, or you used to say, "Hey Siri" or something. Okay. Now, vocal shortcuts doesn't even require any of that. It just reacts to anything you say, which really to translate that for you means the microphone is always on. And yeah. The Apple Intelligence never reveals that to anybody else. All the data is stored locally. Yeah, it's same logic for client-side scanning. But that's one sensor. And that bothers me a lot as well. Just right there, the fact that conversations are being listened to and the AI understands your conversation because it's listening, and the AI can do, voice recognition and translate that to text, pass it to the AI, and then say, okay, this is what they talked about. They talked about buying a car, which Google would love. Google would love this. Then they got the IR scanning. And even I was surprised by this. Did you know that your iPhone is doing this IR scanning to see what's around it? I don't know what the range of a typical IR is, but IR can reach, the same as your TV, 10 feet, 12 feet. So it's scanning the environment. So the IR scanner is on the top of your iPhone, and it's actually scanning movements and shape, and can actually, kind of tell what's happening around it. That's a sensor. Then on top of that, Apple says, we're doing eye scanning. And then I have to understand the technology of eye scanning here. You can't do eye scanning with IR. IR is more shape related, because, it's trying to look for heat spots. To do eye scanning, you need a camera. Am I mistaken here? That's my understanding of how eye scanning has to work. The camera has to be on, which means the camera is always on for the AI. I mean, that's a scary concept. Again, the argument is none of this leaves the phone, but yet Apple says the phone will know you well. Well, there's no doubt about that. It's going to know you very well. It's going to know what you're doing at every moment.
I am your father.
And this is now part of the data that's accumulated by the AI agent, which can then be fed to the AI as part of your profile. So this is the additional risk of a phone versus, let's say, Windows Recall. Windows Recall doesn't have the capability to sense that because you don't have devices like that on your computer.
Yeah, Rob, you mentioned the US, right? I live in the UK, and I have to be really careful what I say now. But you just can do a search online to see what's happening in the UK with regards to privacy and with regards to how governments or the government is like making decisions with regards to getting access to any information. They don't want end-to-end encryption. They want to basically have access to everything. And people, I won't go down that rabbit hole and that issue, but basically you can see the headlines recently in the UK and what's going on here. So, I think for a lot of people, it's okay. Governments are doing things that a lot of people don't like. In the US, you have freedom of speech. Freedom of speech doesn't necessarily exist in the UK. Again, I have to be really careful what I say. What can us as normal people do? Do you have any advice about, what can we actually do? Because you say, don't get an iPhone, don't get a Pixel, don't get a Windows computer, don't get a Mac. Do I get Linux? What do I do?
Well, you need to find a device that doesn't have the capability for client-side scanning. And so it's really that basic. And I actually made a video talking about options. And the idea, of course, is to not have some AI on the device. And by the way, you got to be careful with this, because I don't want to generalize it saying that all AI is bad. What is bad is AI controlled by somebody else, meaning they have agents controlled by somebody else. You can have AI on your device that you installed yourself. I do. I'm running an AI on my Linux computer. In fact, most of the AI developers use Linux. So Linux is very well suited for AI use. So that's different when the AI is yours and you control it. In my case, I put an open source AI on it. But what you don't want is when somebody embeds the AI into the OS. Now, I'm being very specific here. AI embedded into the OS. So to be specific with you, I'm talking about Apple Intelligence, Microsoft Copilot, and Google Gemini. So you got to stay away from all that. So how do you stay away from all that? Well, one of the safest options, of course, is Linux. So on a computer, if you're using Linux, it's not going to have any of that by design. And Linux doesn't preload any AI. You can load your own AI on it, but it's not controlled by anybody else. So you're good there. So that's one of the, if I were in the UK, in fact, if I'm in the US, even if I'm in China, I wouldn't want any kind of AI on device that I do not control, OS embedded AI. Now, there's a lot more options in the phone because there are actually many solutions offered. And one of the general solutions offered is called a degoogle phone, which uses AOSP, which we've discussed, in prior videos. And then you can also have some other open source equivalents like Linux. Now, at the moment, this is not yet mainstream, running Linux like Ubuntu Touch on a phone. So the main popular option is a degoogle phone, and there are many OSs that, of course, can run on a degoogle phone. And you can run the gamut on any of those, and you can put any of those into a phone and they'll all be fine because they're not going to run Google Gemini.
So Linux on your desktop, a degoogled phone. So you sell phones as well, right? So that's an example of degoogled phones, correct?
Correct. So we've been selling our own phones, and we actually provide a service in our store to degoogle phones for you if you're not techie enough to do it. But the prior model we've had was sold out. It's a year and a half ago now. So we just came up with a new model that is going to be released in January, and it's on pre-order right now. It's called the Brax 3. And this will be a very fairly priced phone. This is probably the first time that a phone is going to be available at this price level. And that is because we want to do mass marketing here. We want everyone to have access, not just people who can afford it. So this phone is priced pretty much at half the price of even the original Brax 3. So it's Brax 2. So this is very inexpensive.
The other options, the one that comes to mind is Graphene OS, or you've got Calyx OS. There are various other options. The whole point is don't run the default standard Google operating system, correct? Yeah.
Correct. Yes. So don't forget there's another one called Iode OS. So that's another one that I've introduced. So any of those will run fine. They'll do the job for you.
So run Linux on your desktop. Run one of these degoogled operating systems. The moral of the story is don't use an iPhone. Don't use a Google operating phone. I think that the problem with some of these degoogled phones is the cost. So it's good to hear that you've got another solution for it, like a cheaper phone, if you like, or a less expensive phone. What about like your family? How do you convince them to not run this stuff? Because it's fine for me to have a degoogled phone, but then my partner has an iPhone.
Yeah. So I don't know how do you convince somebody to leave Google if they're so attached to or using an iPhone. You have to believe in privacy. But what happened is our Brax 3 phone, for example, is priced at $279.
That's good.
$279. And I'm going to be honest with you. People are buying them in batches of 4 or 5 because, you buy 4 of them and you're just paying for one iPhone. You can almost take the risk and say, okay, I'll take the risk and see if we can use it. Even if you use an iPhone part of the time only, that's already a big deal. So let's say you put certain activities on a different phone, and maybe you use the iPhones for certain things because it's tracking you, remember? So do you care if it's tracking you at work? Probably not. So, it's not absolute, but do you want it to be part of your personal life? Maybe not. That's maybe when you switch phone.
So Rob, as an example, I think you've shared in the past, like you use Linux for certain tasks, but you'll use, let's say, Mac for editing or something like that. That's an example of that, right?
I've actually stopped doing that.
Oh, okay.
So I'm I'm so scared of Windows that I don't want to do anything Windows. So yes, I can't leave Windows because I'm using DaVinci Resolve and I can't get it to run on Linux, even though it's supposed to run on Linux. So what I've done is have an isolated Windows instance that I only use for one purpose. It doesn't have any data whatsoever. I don't use it for anything else. I don't have email. I have nothing on it. So Windows Recall can run on it all day and it doesn't sense anything because I'm not doing anything on it. So I use it only for editing, which is however long editing takes. It will spy on my editing. I know that it will take screenshots of my editing of a public video. No problem. That's all it's going to see.
So for everyone who's watching, Rob and I have done previous interviews, as I've mentioned. I've linked those below. I've also put Rob's channel below. Please go and subscribe and show the love. Rob, you've created a whole bunch of videos covering this and much more in a lot of detail, right?
That's correct.
So please go and subscribe, show the love. Rob, thanks so much for coming back on the channel, and thank you, for being a champion for privacy.
It's always such a pleasure to be with you, David. Thank you for having me.